Okay, so I'm recording too now. It didn't give the notification, but so anyway, so then I put together this nice little songbook and really started to fall in love with doing arty. It became, I would say, probably my main practice since then. I'll just share this songbook page with you. There we go. And so we'll start by going over this. So I'm just going to go over it. I'm just going to go through it the way I go through my morning verses, I guess, right? So as usual, I'm usually, lazy and bored and tired and whatever else you feel in the morning. And so obviously Ganesha Nama. Om Aparvito Pavito Vasharava Stangato Piva Yasmare Pundari Kakshama Sriyantra Suchi. Om Adai Namaha, Om Keshai Namaha, Om Rishikeshai Namaha, Om to my hand, Om Pundari Kakshan Punapto, Om Pundari Kakshan Punapto, Om Pundari Kakshan Punapto. Om Observanti Tebutu Yubutu Buvi Sansitas, Yubutu Vigna Katarste, Nashanti, Shivajan, Om Namah Shivaya. Om Glom Gang Ganapataye Namaha. Om Glom Gang Ganapataye Namaha. Om Glom Gang Ganapataye Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. We praise that Shankara, who is the source of the power of the wheel of energies, by whose expansion and contraction the universe absorbed and comes into being. That in which all its creation is established, and whence it arises is nor obstructed, because it's unconditioned by its very nature. Gajananam Bhatagandhi Savitam, Kapita Jambu Farasaravaksitam, Masatom Shukvinashakaranam, Namani Vignashara Parvank Gajam. Karanam Kumkumaraktavarnam, Mahamayatam Divyamaharavahanam, Rudasyasanam, Surasanyanatham, Goham Sharaham, Sharanam Pradaya. Yakundandu to Sharahar Bavla, Yashubra Vastra Vitra, Yavina Vandita Vandita Kara, Yasatma Padma Hasana, Yavramachitaya Shankara Pravitavir, Devasata Pichita, Vasamam Batu Sarasati Bhagavati, Nishasya Jajapa. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave, Satchitananda Murtaye, Nishprapanchaya Shantaye, Shri Shivanandaya Te Namah, Shri Abhinavaguptaya Te Namah. Om Sharva Mangla Mangle, Shive Sharvata Sarike, Sharanaitrambake Gauri, Narayanai Namostute, Narayanai Namostute. Om Sajojatim Prapadayami Sajodahe Vai Namo Namaha Bhave Bhave Nati Bhave Bhavasmana Bhava Bhavaya Namaha Vamadavaya Namo Jeste Namaha Shiste Namo Rudraya Namaha Kalaya Namaha Karaviknaya Namo Bharaviknaya Namo Balaya Namo Bharapramanataya Namaha Sharvabhutmanaya Namo Manamanaya Namaha Agorevyo, Gora, Gora, Trivasya, Sharvata, Sharvebhyo, Namaste, Rudra, Rupevya, Tat Purushi Vidmahi, Mahadeva Dhimahi, Tanurudha Puchodaya, Vishana Sharva Vidmanam, Sharva Bhutanam, Brahma Devatir, Ramano Devatir, Rama Shivo, Matstu Sada Shivo. Oh. Amishvara Bharaivanam Swachananatham Shrikananatham Rishidurvasam Manasaputram Trambakanatham Amratikanatham Srinatham Manasaputram Adatrambakakayam Trambakadityam Sangama Varsha Dityam Aruna Dityam Anandam Sumanandam Utpaladava Acharyavam Shri Shambhunatam Ratmanagutam Abhinavagutam Ksemarajam Yogarajam Shri Guru Manakakam Shivacharya Atsisham Shri Mahatabaka Guru Shantati Rupam Avataritam Shiva Shambhum Swarupam Cha Varaivam Rudram Shivo Tantramalayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavata Param Shankararam Loka Shankararam Mahanti Mahavinavagutam Shiva Shankara Avataritam Swarupam Puna Puna Namami Om Swarupam Puna Puna Namami Om Swarupam Puna Puna Namami Om Om Ram Indraya Namaha Om Ramataya Namaha Om Ramanaya Namaha Om Samlatite Namaha Om Ram Varuna Namaha Om Yam Vayavi Namaha Om Sham Kumaraya Namaha Om Ham Shanaya Namaha Om Sum Suraya Namaha Om Som Samaya Namaha Om Bham Bhavaya Namaha Om Bhum Budaya Namaha Om Brim Draspataye Namaha Om Shum Shukraya Namaha Om Sham Shanisharaya Namaha Om Ram Rahmave Namaha Om Kem Ketuve Namaha Om Suraya Namaha Om Ravaya Namaha Om Visharaya Namaha Om Bhagavate Namaha Om Varana Namaha Om Mitraya Namaha Om Adityaya Namaha Om Vishnave Namaha Om Bhatkarya Namaha Om Mitraya Namaha Om Ravaya Namaha Om Suraya Namaha Om Bhanave Namaha Om Kagaya Namaha Krishna Namaha Om Hiranaya Garbhaya Namaha Om Rachaya Namaha Om Atyaya Namaha Om Savrite Namaha Om Arkaya Namaha Om Bhaskaraya Namaha Om Mangala Namaha Om Bhumuputraya Namaha Om Rinatraya Namaha Om Dhanaprataya Namaha Om Sthirasanaya Namaha Om Mahakaya Namaha Om Shavakamaya Namaha Om Lohitaya Namaha Om Litat Shavaya Namaha Om Sambhagana Kripaya Namaha Om Avdaratmajaya Namaha Om Kujaya Namaha Om Bhumaya Namaha Om Buddhadakaya Namaha Om Bhumi Nandaya Namaha Om Ankarkaya Namaha Om Yamaya Namaha Om Shravaraga Parane Namaha Om Shri Kattaya Namaha Om Vrut Kattaya Namaha Om Sharvakama Prada Sharvakama Pala Pradaya Namaha Om Jum Sat Amishwara Bhaya Namaha Om Jum Sat Amishwara Bhairavaya Namaha Om Jum Sat Amishwara Bhairavaya Namaha Om Ram Rim Ram Sa Suraya Namaha Om Sham Shrim Sham Sa Chandraya Namaha Om Kram Krim Kram Sa Umaya Namaha Om Brahm Rim Ram Sa Budaya Namaha Om Gram Grim Ram Sa Gurave Namaha Om Dham Rim Dham Sa Shukraya Namaha Om Pram Prim Pram Sa Sanisharaya Namaha Om Ram Rim Ram Sa Rahuve Namaha Om Tram Trim Tram Sa Ketuve Namaha Om Om Trayambakam Jambahe Sugandhim Pushpivarnam Rukumevi Bananam Murchor Mukshyanamrita Om Sharvesham Swastirvavtu Sharvesham Shantirvavtu Sharvesham Purnam Bhavtu Sharvesham Mangam Bhavtu Sharve Bhavtu Sukina Sharvesham Tirmaya Sharve Banandari Pashantu Ma Kishiduk Vagvat Astoma Satkamayatma Soma Jyotirkamaya Mityorma Mitramaya Om Purnamaram Purnamaram Purnamadachate Purnasaya Purnamade Purnamaya Vishishate Om Shanti 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 Om Mantra Hinam Kriya Hinam Bhakti Hinam Brispati Swa Yudbujut Maya Devi Kari from Trust today. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. So, Om Namah Shivaya. So that's kind of my mantra opening. As you see, I skipped all the songs in between and I just jumped to the little closing prayers and the finishing there. I work with a lot of elderly people, and one of the funny little things, yogas that I give them, is I often tell, like, do some little prayer and do something, and at the end you celebrate Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and they do this after the arti, and this is amazing yoga. Just this, the arms in the air, this sort of movement of celebration. It lifts all the energy, it picks you up, it opens the body. So it's like sometimes we just mix these little yogas into our practices, right? And especially for elderly people, they're bored, they're tired of life, they're sick of it all a lot of times. And so a little celebration, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, right? It's like, I should move so you guys can see me a little better. But it's very, very uplifting. Little movements that we can do. I'll see if this works better. There, you can see me a bit better. So, well, the reason I put this in with, because I could put this songbook, I could put these mantras kind of in almost any section, but I put them in the Mercury section because Mercury likes these sort of lists, and he wants to kind of go through everything. And so that's what we're doing here. We're going through every planet. I'm an astrologer, which is why I do all the planetary mantras as well. Or as many as I can fit. You can see I skipped over. Where is it? Oh, let's talk about a couple of these little things. This Mars Nyasa. I really like this. In Kashmiri Shaivism, they teach, I guess, really what the main practice of Kashmiri Shaivism that I've learned is this thing where you're putting the mantras in all the different parts of your body. And it's something like 108 mantras that they have that they put in everywhere. It's quite complicated, hard to remember, hard to do yourself. And so my teacher said, well, just do Mars Nasya. I'm very Martian person. I'm Scorpio ascendant with Mars and Sun, and everything's kind of packed in. So I'm very Mars person. And so this makes quite a bit of sense for me. But I find it's kind of a warm up in a way. If you want to start to do some of those more complicated nyasas, what they call them, then this is a good place to start. Right, kind of putting Mars mantras into all these different parts of the body. And it's like, well, now I'm Mars. Right now we're Mars. We put these in. I do this also with students once in a while. And it's really nice to do it that way because you can say, bring your awareness to your feet. Om Mangala Namaha. Aware of only your feet. Om Mangala Namaha. Right, you can kind of like really put those mantras quite deep into people, and they really like it. People really, really, really quite like the Mars Nyasas. And so I use that as kind of, it's very similar to body awareness, right? So like that. I do a lot of, I can see on the sun mantras in particular, a lot of repetition there. As I do the sun for the directions, and then I do the 12 sort of sun. And so we're repeating, why not? It's sun gods, and so they can do us good. So we repeat them. This section here are the 5 Brahmas and the prayer to the Shiva Gurus. I think anyone, if any of you guys are following Kashmiri Shaivism, I know a couple of you are, and I don't know about the others, but if you're following Kashmiri Shaivism, then you probably want to learn these two shlokas. Five Brahmas, this is something we did with Mark just about every class. Especially, and what I do when I do this sometimes is sometimes I stop at a mantra. One of the ones Mark often stopped at, we do it over and over again. Gorebhyo te gorebhyo, gora gora tribascha, sharvata sharva sharvebhyo, namaste rudra rupebhya. And we just keep doing that mantra. And so that was quite a popular one. The Agorebhyo, it's like basically just saying don't be afraid of the world. In a sense, it's the fearsome deities, but it's like I'm here to help you in a way, Rudra. And then we get the prayer to the Shiva gurus. And of course, if some of you are studying Kashmiri Shaivism, you'll recognize some of these names. That's basically what it is. It's just a list of names. And of course, Kashmiri Shaivism, I spent a lot of time with the Natha Babas in India at their ashrams and just whatever, lots of time with Natha Babas. And we can see here that Kashmiri Shaivism is a lot of Natha gurus. Amarkanath, Srinath, Rambakanath. And so these are all kind of Natha Babas, like that. Sachinanda Natham, they say. I'm not sure if this is a Nath himself, but actually a lot of like Sachinanda Tantra, it's like a dualistic Tantra. But actually we get like all that stuff I talked about in the first chapter on the Tattvas, that's all coming from Sachinanda Tantra. It's all coming from the sort of dualistic system of Tantra. And then they kind of brought it into there from there and adjusted it. Like I even called it 36 Tattvam. But if you look at my chart, there's actually, I listed 38. Because I went to Bhairava and Bharani. And so these are kind of, anyways, this is the list Mark gave me. I don't know if all of you know Mark. I know a couple of you definitely do. Mark Dichkowski, he's a translator of, good luck spelling his name. He's a translator of the Tantras. And well, we had a question the other girl asked in the last class. She said like, well, why is all this coming from India? Well, you could also say, why now? And really, it's because this stuff is getting translated now. That's why now. Tantra Loka, like it's just starting to come out. I think I don't know how many volumes in total, but I think he's up to volume 6 he's released. And so yeah, that's why now. And so Mark is, well, for anyone studying Kashmiri Shaivism, Mark has to be one of the big gurus. I find it a little bit funny, actually, because Kashmiri Shaivism is, these days, it seems to be a very intellectual path of yoga and tantra that really kind of turns a lot of people off. Because it's like, well, why so intellectual? Why all these scriptures? Why all this? Why like that? Why like that? And well, I guess it's because it's just coming out. And so we're learning from it from the scriptures. And so it's quite scripture orientated at the moment, Kashmiri Shaivism. You get some of these like Utpaladeva, kind of down here on this third line. He's actually a lot like Jalaluddin Rumi. He writes this beautiful, beautiful mystic poetry, this kind of love poetry to Shiva. It's really, really lovely. Dana, I think you're in Italy now, aren't you?
I'm in Greece, actually.
Oh, okay, you're in Greece. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's an Italian, a lot of Kashmiri Shaivism, actually, really, really good stuff is coming out of Italy. Torello, is that his name? I think it's Torella, maybe. And he's been doing a lot of translation. He translates a lot of Utpaladeva stuff. I belong to this, it's like academia.org or something. And you can kind of pick your favorite topics, and then they send you anytime an academic comes out with a new paper on that topic, it sends to you. So I just got something from Torella the other day about Paladeva. Very, very beautiful stuff. And again, even that poetry is just starting to come out. Shambunatha was said to be Abhinava Gupta's, was that Shambunatha? Yeah. He was said to be one of Abhinava Gupta's, you could say, his mystic guru. And then we've got guys like Somananda and Anandam, Lakshmana Gupta, Abhinava Gupta, Kshe Maharaj. Kshe Maharaj is actually very important. We're starting to translate a lot of his works as well. And he's very much on the, they call the Kaula side of things, which is more the really more mystical side of sort of things. And so Kshe Maharaj is also very good. And so we get a lot of our gurus here. And maybe I should be talking about the gurus in Jupiter class, but kind of wanted to go over some of this stuff and introduce you to some of these people. Like this. Or is it this? Yeah, the five faces of Shiva. They call it, this is actually comes from the Vedas, and this is often used by a lot of Brahmins as well, the five Brahmanas. But then on the Shiva side of things, we get a lot of temples that are dedicated to the five-faced Shiva lingam and this sort of thing. And you'll find a lot of that sort of stuff in India. And it's usually pointing towards, again, more of a mystical tantric side for that temple. I really watch for like the five-faced Shivas, and I really watch for Bhairava when I'm kind of going through the temples in India. These are kind of my two main. I get a little bit excited. I'm like, oh, I got Bhairava, you know, kind of like that. So these are kind of, anyways, I don't know why, but I feel something towards this. And this is really, I think I've mentioned this all the time, I'm sure, but this is really, you don't pick your religion. It picks you. Right? Like I wandered all over India and went to so many Shiva places in India before I even realized, oh, wow, who's this Shiva guy? I seem to like him. And so there was just this very natural draw I had towards Shiva. And so that's all very nice. I'll just mention some of the other things down here. I find the Bija mantras, that's the best thing I can do before I start to sing. It really, all these mantras, it really warms up the voice and it really warms everything up before you start to sing. And that's even like, that's even really nice to do some kind of warm up, even like before you do meditation. Before you do any of these spiritual practices, it's nice to do some kind of a warm up. I've got the list. These are a bunch of the Purana mantras for each of the planets. And I'm kind of put these in a different order in the things, but I've like, my focus has always been, my guru gave me Jupiter mantra very early. And when I was doing all this, and so I've been doing Jupiter mantra for a long time, this one here, as you see. And I don't practice the other ones. I put them in my list because it's like, Mike, every Monday, do the moon one. Every Tuesday, do the Mars one. I don't do that. I skip over this and I start singing because I get all excited. And I want to get to the Narmadi Arti because I love it. It's just like, this is my heart and my soul goes into these songs. I don't have the translation for this one, but if you come down to the next one, well, I'll go through this first because I've got three artis here. And the Narmada arti is the one, you could say my main one, I guess. Om Jai Jagadanandi Maya Jaya Nandakandi Brahma Hare Hara Shankara Deva Shivari Shankar Udri Palanti Om Jai Jagadanandi. And it's just, I don't know, I just really like that. And then, so that's a little bit specific for the Narmada River Valley. And then you get to the Shiva Arti, which of course, just about every Arti in India is going to sing Shiva Arti. Om Jai Shiva Omkara, Prabhu Hari Shiva Omkara, Brahma Vishnu Sada Shiva, Brahma Vishnu Sada Shiva, Ardangi Dara, Om Jai Shiva Omkara. And then we get to the Ganga Arti. Om Jagange Mata, Shri Jagange Mata. And of course, that's a Varanasi thing. But we get to something like the Narmada Ashtak, and I've got the translation here so we can kind of look at this a little bit. And when you read the translation in English, it's absolutely beautiful. It's just this song to nature, to this natural body of river that just comes through and supports everyone and everything. And it's very lovely, like your divine touch, even to the lowly fishes, you know, this kind of thing. And it's so lovely. You confer your happiness to the fish and the tortoise and the crocodile and the geese and the chakra birds that all dwell in your waters. And it's just such a lovely sort of sentiment like that. This one's really hard to sing, actually. It goes really fast. I'll kind of show you a little bit how that tune goes. Sabindu Sindhu Sukolata Taranga Manjuranjutam Dvasta Papa Jatta Jatta Kari Varisamyatam Katanda Dutta Kala Butta Bityari Varmada Tadiyapa the Pankajamami Devi Narmade. And so we get these kind of things. Hanuman Chalisa. This is one of the best songs. And of course, I've got it all in Hindi here, but if you go through the translations as well in English, it's really one of the best songs for teaching someone with a difficult Mars position, or anyway, someone who deals with a lot of anger in their life and a lot of this sort of aggression. And they don't really have a good channel for any of that. And so Hanuman Chalisa is very nice. I'll sometimes, because I deal with people, they don't care about Hanuman or Hinduism or anything like that. And so I'll sometimes mention to them to look at some of the spiritual warriors, right? They have them in Christianity, they have them in Muslim faith and that sort of thing. I think actually, I've got one, she's a Muslim woman and I've done charts for her children. And her son's got quite a difficult Mars. He's about 16 or 17-year-old boy now. And he's going to be quite a handful. And it was funny, as we were going through like some spiritual warriors from the Muslim side, I was thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? This kid's practically already a jihadist. And so now it's like, go study some more jihadists. But there is that sort of a righteousness side to spiritual warriors, and hopefully that'll rub off on him more. But he's kind of an aggressive bad kid, and he's not going to be up to any good in his life. The daughter in that family is going to be a gem, though. She's just beautiful, amazing chart. But the son's just a jerk. It happens. So Shri Ramachandra, this is also very nice. This is more the Krishna, Ramakrishna sort of side of things. Krishna Maha Mantra. Again, I'll do a few rounds of this, depending on how I feel that day. Sometimes I'll sit there and sing forever, and other times I just do a couple lines and move on. Guru Stotram. I think they teach this with I think the Ashtangi yogis learn at least part of this. They don't learn it all, because every Ashtangi yogi I've showed it to, they go, oh, I know that. Oh, wait, what's that? So they kind of learn some parts of this and they don't others. And I picked this one up from a very lovely ashram. This man was, the way this man sung, it was so, he was just such a beautiful, the way he sung, the way he did the arti, everything was just so lovely. And so I added the Guru Stotram. It's more of a soft, it's like Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara. It's like that slow, like love song to the gurus of the gods. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I've tried doing a recording of this so I could post it and share with people, but there's always this buzzing sound that stops me from posting it. Lingakshatam, this is for the Shiva Linga. And I don't know if you guys have Spotify. There's some old Bubba on Spotify that's singing this Lingakshatam. I can't find it on YouTube, but the Spotify version is just this beautiful. He's an old Western Bubba. Singing, but it's very lovely. All the parts and talking about all the gurus and gods who kind of worship the Shivalinga. And I've got the translation there for you. Shiva Shambho. Who can't sing this song without completely rocking out? And it's just that kind of, and I find my Archie does that. It kind of goes fast and soft and fast and soft, and it kind of does this sort of thing. Muji has a group on YouTube who sings this just like full power. Bunch of just like happy Western kids in India singing Shiva Shambho. It's great. And then this version of Om Namah Shivaya is very, very popular as well. I don't have all the words here because I'm pretty sure like Rama Shwara, Ganga Dara. Some of these, there's a few more. Anyways, I've got some verses missing here, but we go through all of them. Krishna Das has a lot of really great YouTube stuff on this. Shivoham. I added this one. I should. A lot of times when we show up at Mark's classes for class, he's sitting there, he's singing, or he's playing sitar. He's an amazing sitar player. You'll find some of Mark's sitar on YouTube as well. Great stuff. Heavy metal of sitar, really. I was a little metalhead when I was a kid, so I dig that sort of stuff. But he was singing the Shivoham when I came one day, and I just, wow, what is this? And I have some different ways to sing it. I'm going to sing a little bit of it now. I'm probably not going to be happy with it because I have to be kind of like in the zone. But it's like, Soham, 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 Shivoham, 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 Soham, Soham. Anyway, I have a lot of different ways I sing that one, but it's just so lovely. I sing it like this, just again, like a love song to Shiva and my own inner Shiva. Soham, Shivoham is basically I am Shiva, I am Shiva, I am Shiva. All this is Shiva, I am Shiva, you are Shiva, you're Shiva. Jai Mata Kali, Jai Mata Durga. I've had the pleasure of actually teaching this one to a lot of Indian people. I learned it from a friend played it for me years ago, actually, when I was in Nicaragua 15 years ago, I learned this one. And a friend played it for me. It actually came from some California, what can you say, Bajan group. Some nice, anyways, that's some nice Shiva, what was it, Om Namah Shivaya, they had a nice song of that. I have no idea what their name is, but they had this beautiful Jai Mata Kali, Jai Mata Durga, Jai Mata Kali, Jai Mata Durga, Kali Durga, Namo Namah, Kali Durga, Namo Namah. And then you put yourself on repeat for about an hour on that one and just go to bliss, right? Tameva Mata, this is like a closing song. And a lot of times in the Arti, they sing this like just before the end. They do this if they're sitting and singing, they'll stand up and they'll put the hands together and they'll kind of walk in a circle as they're singing it and kind of face every direction and sort of say their namaste in every direction as they sing Tameva Mata. And then at the end, they'll get down on the knees and they'll give a little prayer to the altar. And a lot of times they do that while they're singing. Tvameva Mata Chatapira Tvameva. Tvameva Bandhushta Shakta Tvameva. Tvameva Vidya Dravanam Tvameva. Tvameva Sharvam Mama Deva Deva. And so we get these kind of things. Well, the reason I'm bringing this into the Mercury class, Well, because it's a lot of words, but Mercury also has a lot to do with like memorizing things. Um, and so singing these songs or to do all this, go through these mantras every day, you slowly and slowly start to memorize all this stuff. And if we think of our mind, well, mantra is something they say it works on every level of the mind, body, spirit, psychophysical organism, kind of penetrates all levels. But if we think of a lot of what we're trying to do in the mind, we've got these like cycles of thought going on and these sort of negative and even if it's positive, sometimes if it's just cycling, it's like, get rid of that. And so we use this arti and the songs and these mantras to kind of help us get out of those other grooves and make new ones, make kind of healthier looping thoughts. And so, like I notice, I do my arti and then I go out and I'm walking through the day and I'm just about always singing one of these sort of songs in my head. And we all do that with pop songs and things like that, especially the really bad ones we don't like. They're really catchy and we sing it and we're like, am I really singing this stupid song? And so at least here we can do it with arti, with devotional music. And so the name of God is coming up and that feeling of God and those deeper connections. And it's like Mercury. It's kind of an immature way. It's kind of a weak way of like, oh, that's your yoga, really? But it's still quite effective. And that's one of the main things Mercury's known for is his immaturity. He likes to have fun and play games and laugh. Laughter is such a Mercury thing. And so that's part of what arti is about, especially the Hare Krishnas. They do a lot of singing and dancing and all of that. And the whole thing is really about having a lot of fun. But it's like, and it's really easy to do this when you're down a spiritual path and you're going to ashrams and you're doing all these practices and studying all these shlokas, and you start to get very serious. You're like, no, I'm on a spiritual path, right? Like, that's it. I have no time for fun and games. It's like, no, you have to have time for fun and game. Your spiritual path should be partly fun and games. Right? You should enjoy it. It should be fun for you. And if it's not fun, well, then sing some more. Find a song you like and sing it. And I recommend it to people when they're making, like, I recommend a lot of people make their own sort of morning songbook. And I'll tell people, like, bring in a pop song that's popular and means something to you and makes you feel good and connected. Bring in any kind of music like that. There's a lot of very sort of spiritual, even rock songs, right? The writing of some of these musicians is amazing. Even if the musician might be a dirtbag, some of their songs and their music is just like, wow, that's beautiful. And so bring in any kind of song or music into your practice can be a really, really nice thing. Just try to be a kid again for a few minutes of a day. Spend half hour being youthful, being a little bit silly, playful, all of this kind of thing. We used to talk about these kind of like gradings of spiritual practices in a sense. And so this is me and Sanjay, my astrology guru. And so we kind of talk about like this sort of song and dance as being like, in a way, it's like you bring it into the kindergarten level, right? Little kids at school, and you start singing these devotional songs. And so it's like, in a way, it's this kindergarten level of spirituality that anyone's able to sort of access it because it's fun. You clap your hands and you, right, whatever, you kind of enjoy it. And if you're doing it with children, right, you get them to clap their hands and everybody's having fun. And it's just about making it fun. The funny thing is now that I've kind of have my own sort of dedicated arti practice and things like this, as I'm like, okay, well, it's kindergarten level, but actually it's also PhD level spirituality. And I found that with a lot of things, like when I studied martial arts, for example, the very first martial art form they taught us, it's like a sequence in yoga, you could say. The very first form they taught us, they're like, This is the most advanced form. So you start practicing it now, and after 20 years of Kung Fu, then you'll understand this form. And in a way, this music and this stuff that we're giving children to learn about God and spirituality is the same way. It's kind of like, here, it's just fun and games. Okay, enjoy. But ultimately, it allows us to connect on such a deep level, and it's such an easy yoga to practice. Anybody can practice it, right? And so it's wonderful, wonderful sort of thing to do. And again, I do really recommend, like, maybe some of you kind of belong to an ashram and they have an arti and you follow that arti. Okay, that's fine. Enjoy your arti. But if you don't have that, I do recommend working to try to make your own songbook. And I've adjusted this over time. I'm like, I don't like saying that here. I'm going to put it up here. I'm going to move that to there. And there's still a couple little, like, I have Gayatri in there. That's the worst part in this whole arti, to do Gayatri. Don't do Gayatri where I said do Gayatri. Put Gayatri somewhere else. But I'm still trying to figure out where to exactly to put these things. Like that. And so that's yeah, that's the arti. And that's a lot of the mantras then, and you've heard them at least once now. If anyone's interested, we can do this together sometime if you want. Go through the whole arti and sing and dance, and if you want, and just enjoy. I love going through this. So if anybody's like, yeah, Mike, let's do arti together, sign me up. I'm already like, I'm good. I'm ready to go. So if you want to do that, I'm very happy to. Now,
you want to get up with me every morning, Mike, and do it? Like we'll do it at 5 a.m. every day. How does that sound?
how about 6? I've been on a 6 o'clock schedule these days. I don't know. My schedule changes sometimes, but these days I'm up usually at 6. But yeah, I'm very happy to. Maybe if you move to BC, then it'll be 7 or what? No, you have to move the other way. Sorry. Yeah. But oh yeah, if you want to do this in the morning.
How long does it take you to kind of go through all of it?
It depends. 45 minutes to an hour. Yeah, it sort of depends. Sometimes I stop at one of those mantras and I just keep going through it, especially that mantra Om Jum Sa Amishvara Bhairavaya Namaha. And this is a Kashmiri Shiva mantra. This is from Mark. I have, and geez, I don't know if they're accessible. I photocopied a bunch of them and I give them out to people when they come visit me in Varanasi. But Laxman Jew had a songbook, an arti book, and it's just kind of this photocopied thing that people have, right? I took it from Mark and made a bunch of photocopies myself. And so I don't know if it's possible to get it, but you'll see it in that. And that's kind of there's actually a whole bunch of Havan in there. I wanted to mention that actually about Havan. For those of you that don't know, Havan that's the fire ritual. Now, where is this? Oh, totally put it away. And I actually use a lot of these mantras. It's kind of a simple Havan you can do. It's having a bit of tough time with the screen sharing here. So it's a very simple sort of Havan you can do. It's kind of the first one I was taught. And a lot of times what you'll do, like before Havan, you'll do a shloka. And a lot of times I'll pull some shloka out of Lakshman Jew's book. But you can do any kind of shloka that means something to you. Even these ones I have up here on from the Spanda Karaka. Now, I should mention, Spanda Karaka is kind of like my main Bible. You could say it's my main scripture that I follow. And it's a little outdated, and there's a whole bunch of new tantras and kind of new stuff that's going on. And that's fine. Okay, I study that as well. But Spanda Karaka is kind of my main book. It has everything you could say. Everything I could ever want anyways. I'm very happy with it. And it's part of a trilogy in a way. It goes with the Shiva Sutra. The reason Shiva Sutra isn't my Bible is because it's very complicated, especially compared to Spandakarika. Spandakarika kind of explains the Shiva Sutra. And then the third book of that is actually Mark's doctrine. It's how he got his PhD, did a doctorate on the Spandakarika. And I think we can pull Mark's doctorate into that. And that's actually really excellent book to read. The Doctrine of Spanda, something like that. Anyway,
Vibration.
Doctrine of Vibration. Okay. So yeah, Mark translates every single word. So he would never leave Spanda out there. But so yeah, the Doctrine of Vibration, excellent book to learn about Kashmiri Shaivism and all of this stuff. Really, really amazing book. So, and you'll notice that also in Mark's translation, he'll never leave a word like chakra there. He always translates it as wheel of energies. He's like, I'm a translator. My job is to translate. So it's like, okay, well, thanks, Mark. Even though it gets confusing because he'll be there talking. Not a great example, wheel of energies, because we all kind of know that, but he'll be talking and using some little term. I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? And then I'll figure it out later, the Hindi word that goes with what he's talking about, and go, oh, he's talking about mudras. So now I understand. So we kind of, yeah. And that's actually, you could say that's other Mercurial thing. Mercury is, he's the traveler. He adapts to his environment. And so a big part of that, and a very Mercurial thing to do, it like learn new languages, for example. That's such a Mercury power. Now, I think I'm talking to a whole bunch of Mercury superpowers, people. I think you all probably have very powerful Mercuries. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I don't think. If your Mercury wasn't strong, you would be somewhere else. And so there is that adaptability, especially for the Westerners are kind of, we're adapting to this foreign religion, this foreign spiritual path. And so we're trying to adapt it. And well, I'm kind of a good example of that because I'm trying to bring all of that into just my life. I'm this Western person. I grew up in the West. It's all I know. And right, kind of a small town village boy and that kind of thing, but I'm trying to adapt all this yoga stuff and make it a part of my life rather than, well, I'm trying to adapt myself to it to a certain degree as well, but rather than totally try to bring myself over and become an Indian or become a Hindu. I'm trying to bring all that over kind of to my side and bring it in. Then I guess it doesn't matter which way we do. But that sort of adaptability that we have to do when we travel, go to a new country and you have to learn new money and new languages and a few new words and all of this sort of learning to adapt is very Mercurial. And I think actually a lot of the clients that are going to come to us with some kind of Mercurial problem as well. Kind of depends. I'm sure we all get different sorts of clients, but Mercury relates with any kind of learning disabilities. Mercury relates with, well, the whole nervous system. Mercury is actually very yoga and very Kundalini. If we look at well, the symbol for Kundalini, the two snakes going up the pole. We look on the Western side of things, that's from Hermes, who is Mercury. And that's that sort of, in a way, it's a symbol of that sort of adaptability that we want to be able to do. We want to be able to go kind of in and out and kind of be able to, I think it was actually Laxman Ju, one of his books, and he says, what tantra is we go from spirituality to materialism, and in a way it's you kind of keep going back and forth until what starts to happen is that the two start to come together more and more in your life. And so early in the practice, you're going one to the other, material, spirit, material, spirit. But it's like it slowly starts to become one. And that's what yoga is. That's what Kundalini is. That's what non-dualism is. We're trying to bring it all together in a way. And so this ends up working quite well to, you can say, a good technique. Go and enjoy. Go and do meditation. Go and enjoy. Go and make mantra. This sort of thing. So I'm going to share this other screen with you now. So we come to the Mercury part. I just came across this quote from Revelations. I haven't checked the Bible to see if it's a real quote or not, but I think it probably is. The Bible does have some mystical stuff in it. And so I thought, well, wow, this is a great quote from the Bible, the mystery of the seven stars, the seven golden candlesticks, the seven angels, the seven churches. I need to do some research. I got to find out what those seven churches are. I'm very curious. Maybe one of you guys can do the research for me and tell me, become my teachers. Well, you already are my teachers, so get to work, guys. So the other thing with Mercury is, and I kind of wrote about this, but it was he represents rhetoric. And for me, when I came to rhetoric, it was like a moment of enlightenment for me. I'd always studied philosophy, and philosophy was all about the truth. You're looking for the truth. What's the truth? What's the truth? What's the truth? And you're just looking. You're never ever finding anything. And then all of a sudden, when I studied writing, I studied communications, and I took a couple of rhetoric courses actually, and I was like, wow, rhetoric doesn't care about the truth at all. This is amazing. This is beautiful. It's concerned with what's most plausible, and it's concerned with how we convince people, how we kind of bring them over to our side in a way. And so it's that convincing. What's the most convincing argument? What's the best argument? And as any lawyer knows, it's okay, you have an argument, you've got a case, you're like, no, this is the best option. But if you really want to be able to convince people of what your case is, you also have to know what all the criticism against whatever your case is. And so you have to know where people are going to say, oh, no, well, what about this and what about that? And so you actually, a really good practice to do is like, okay, you believe in something and you make a case for that. Make a case for the opposite side. Make a case to argue against yourself. And that's a wonderful exercise to do with anything you believe in. Like, well, why shouldn't I believe in this? Or why might this be wrong? And make that other case. Mercury's, again, very two-sided and very adaptable. That's what I really liked about the rhetoric, was like, you can make a case for either side in a way that, like, there's no truth. And so I thought that was just the most beautiful, amazing thing. No truth? You mean that could be right or that could be right? And it becomes more what's a stronger case, basically. And so rhetoric's quite nice. The other thing, and I wanted to add this in here, and I never did, I wanted to talk about a lot of the rhetorical fallacies. And this is really quite important because it's like, that's where you're going to find the holes in your own argument, you could say. And well, anytime you're doing research, kind of has a lot to do with Mercury as well, in a way. And so anytime you're doing research, you should know what the fallacies are, what the potential fallacies are. And some of those are like the appeal to authority. Okay, that's pretty good appeal, but that's still doesn't bring you to the truth. Okay, that guy's been, right? It's like me. Okay, he's been in India 15 years, but still he doesn't know everything. You might think, oh, an authority, right? I always say, oh, Mark did this and Mark teaches us that. And so we do it because some great authority told me to. And so that's all right, but it's still not going to get you to the truth. Another fallacy that I see, well, it's probably the most popular fallacy and it's the most effective fallacy. And that would be the emotional appeal. Now, oh my God, when I was in rhetoric class, I struggled with this emotional appeal. I don't like emotional appeals. If you try to appeal to my emotions, I'm probably going to get very rude and mean with you. I don't like that emotional appeal at all, because it's one of the most like easiest ways for there to be a mistake in there. And maybe I'm just hard and a cruel person. I don't know. That's very possible. But I don't like these sort of appeals like do it for the children. Well, why? Right? There's so many other reasons, like give me a good reason to do it, sort of thing. Right? Do it because I made you feel bad or I made you feel guilty. And those are like, people close to us will do that all the time, right? Make us feel a bit guilty and then we have to do it. And that's where actually you shouldn't do it. Say, what the hell are you doing making me feel like this? Right? And so emotional appeal is it's like I said, it's very effective, but it's also, I don't like it at all. And I had problems in school with that because I would be you have to make a case, right? They give you an assignment, you have to make your case, and they'd say, well, you didn't give an emotional appeal. I say, because I don't like emotional appeals. And they say, well, other people do, and it'll help convince them. And I'm like, well, I don't want to convince the dark, bad side of people. I want to convince their, I want them to think about it and really like come to their decision in a rational way. But anyways, the emotional appeal is still probably the most effective. But again, don't do it on me because you won't like the result. I just had some people that really hard sometimes because these emotional appeals are just like, it's like, how do you say no to that? I'm like, well, I can do that. I can do it pretty easy actually, and I can be pretty rough with people. And maybe it's because I had a rough upbringing myself and people were pretty hard on me as well. And it was like, no, that emotional appeal is not going to cut it. We see that with like little babies and stuff, and they use it against us. Wow, 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 wow. They cry, right? And they hit us. And so we just want to give them whatever they want. But then the childhood experts say, no, don't do that, because then they'll cry and whine. And then you end up with a spoiled child as they become a teenager. And so I guess maybe it's because maybe I'm a teacher, but I look at everyone as like my children in a way. And so I get these people, they come kind of crying to me with these emotional appeals. And I'm like, get rid of that emotional appeal, throw it in the garbage. Don't ever bring it to me again. When you have something reasonable and rational, bring that to me. Because a lot of times, like I'll give free astrology readings to people if they give me a good argument, you can say, and they're sincere and a bunch of that sort of stuff. But if they come with these emotional appeals like, Bubba, you have to help me, my life is hell, I just lost my job, and blah, blah, blah. Geez, I probably shouldn't say this, it'll probably make me look bad. But it was a young girl from India, and anyway, she's having problems with the elders, and she's saying like, I'm thinking of killing myself. And I had some stepbrothers when I was young were like that. They were always like telling me they're going to kill themselves. And eventually I figured out it's actually way better to say, well, go to hell, go kill yourself then, if that's really what you want to do. But if people are starting to use these, again, very strong emotional appeal, it's like, wow, I should do something to help this person. Okay, stop telling people you're going to try to kill yourself. That's my help for that person. Don't bring that emotional appeal to people because nobody's going to like you. It's going to make your situation worse, actually. Say, okay, I have problems in my life. I'm sad. Why am I always sad? Okay, maybe I can help with that. Maybe I can talk with that. And so, yeah, we get a lot of these sort of like rhetorical fallacies. And you can look that up online and you'll get like lists, huge lists of rhetorical fallacies. But I kind of wanted to talk about the main one that we face it all the time, especially as teachers and healers. And that's what we want to do. We want to help someone, right? So they come with this big emotional appeal. But I think actually the best way we can help them sometime is like, just cut that out. Stop giving me bullshit, right? Like just come to me as a reasonable person and then we can deal with it. And so we have to, it's part of our boundaries as well. And we have to be able to set those for ourselves. A couple things in this class I want to go over that I kind of feel like I should have gone over it already. And I went, what? I didn't put that in there. What's going on? Well, the 4 aims of life is one of them. And this is quite nice because, well, out of the 4 aims, 2 of them are quite spiritual and 2 of them are quite materialistic. And so, and then what we'll find is,
Mike, if we can,
yeah, go ahead.
when we're talking about emotional appeal, I guess what would be the best technique or way you use to kind of disarm that? Because yeah, like you're spot on that people come with emotional appeal, and then like basically we use the chart as a way to blame our opinion kind of thing on the chart rather than putting ourselves in the line of like saying your emotional appeal is crap. So how do you kind of best like approach that perspective where it's like, because in a way when someone uses emotional appeal, they're kind of losing respect or responsibility for themselves at the same time. So like it's kind of like you point that out when you point out the emotional appeal, I think. So how do you kind of dance around that? Because I usually just start blaming the chart and then it becomes, well, astrology's crap rather than it having an actual conversation or dialect where it goes somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's I can be pretty direct.
Yeah. Okay.
Like this young girl recently, and I feel a little bit like, and it's like, well, why do I feel bad? It's like, well, what if she kills herself the next day, right? Because some guru was mean to her, and it's like, well, that's nothing. That's not on me, right? That's not. She's not my responsibility. Her life is not my responsibility. And now it could be like a sister or a brother or someone who's much closer to you who, well, now it's a little bit more, but it's like, I try to bring it to reason. It's like, why are you trying to make me feel guilty? Why are you trying to make me feel bad? You want something from me and you start by making me feel like crap. Like if you want something from me, try making me feel good right off the bat, right? And saying, oh, I read about you online and you seem like a great Guruji and or whatever, you know, you seem like a really wise person who can help me with this problem. And then it's like, well, I have to help that person in a way. But the person who comes with this sort of emotional crap, I don't feel any obligation to wade into their muck. It's like, get out of the mud first and we'll talk. And so it's like, that's really how I approach it. It's like, why are you trying to make me feel like this? Why are you trying to make me feel guilty? I have nothing to do with your suicide. I have nothing to do with your bad life. And so I get very quite direct with people this way. And I like to think it's a kind of medicine. It's like think about how you approach people before you approach them. Because I think also if you're trying to help someone out of your guilty conscience, I don't know if it's possible to be the kind of help that you would like to be for them. For example, right? And so it's like, well, what can you even do for the person who comes with these emotional appeals like that? Again, it's the energy. It's the energy they come with, and it's the energy that you reflect back. So what are you reflecting back? Your guilty conscience. Here, go fix yourself with my guilty conscience. Good luck with that. And
Then
so
it can become pity and like just the lower realm of emotions, of vibrations, basically.
exactly. And so we have to kind of get that solid ground first to work with people. And so we're working with people from the place we're working. It's this place of like positivity. It's this place of wherever you are in life, right? Your place of enlightenment, and share that with people. And that's where we're going to help them. And so in a lot of ways, these people coming with these harsh emotional appeals, it's like we can't help them until we get them on some kind of ground. And the best help we can give them is to point them to that and say, you're talking to me from the mud, and that's just going to sink us both. So come on, let's talk from this space. And I think in a way, as the teacher or the guru or the counselor or whatever it is we're doing, that's like a really, really big part of what we're doing. Is just holding that space. And so when people try to kind of with those emotional appeals or any kind of manipulation, they're trying to control the space and they're trying to hold the space, but they're holding it with this kind of dark energy. And so if we go into the space that they're holding for their therapy or whatever it is, we can't really do much. And so it's someone just sent me a message today about Mark, actually, and how can he be such a big guru because he's so angry and aggressive. He kicks, like, if you're kind of like sleeping in his class, he'll throw you out, no problem. But no hard feelings. You're welcome back the next time, no problem. And I'm kind of the same way too. I can be quite harsh with people, but it's done. It's like you come to me the next day and I've said my say, and as long as, again, with the emotional appeal, if they come back to me the next day with some reasonable ground, or they want to actually share what their suffering is, then we can work together. But I can be quite harsh with clients as well, and just say, like, go away, I'm not even to talk with you.
Can I share, because
Yep.
I agree with a lot of things, and I have to say that I'm quite aggressive also, and I actually like people like that. I don't like emotional appeals, maybe because of my upbringing with my mom, like all that guilt stuff. I cannot stand it. But with time and with a bit of patience and compassion, what I have learned is to have very solid boundaries myself, to be clear when people are trying to manipulate the situation. And what I have learned is that I tell them not so aggressively as I should, maybe sometimes, but because we work with various stages, all of us here. Like, it's true that some of my clients come for astrology, but what I do is I guide them maybe to get a session with me for some breathing. It's just an excuse to teach them to see the difference between the emotional side of the, like, I take them to another part of what I do as an excuse for them to get them to that grounded space. And then I actually tell them very directly, but maybe with a sweeter voice, like, can you see that you are not your emotions? Can you see that you're trying to manipulate me? Like, maybe this is what you hate about your partner. You're telling me this, that they're trying to do to you. You are projecting on me, exactly. And once you teach them to do that through the body, this is my experience, like with a few classes of whatever, you can just do whatever there, like it could be breathing, it could be relaxation, and then get them back into the astrology session without using the astrology as an excuse, but teaching them to see themselves as the people that are projecting their own emotions. And that actually, like you say, Mike, that has helped a lot of people to get clear, like take
Yeah.
off, your glasses and see reality as it is. And even if it hurts in the beginning, take responsibility. And once you do, then together we can work from another stage and work longer time together.
Yeah. And really, it's a blessing when you get the kind of clients who are willing to accept that sort of criticism. Like, do you realize you're trying to manipulate me? And as you brought in the partner, and it's like, maybe you're doing the same thing with your partner. And so they're doing what you want, but they feel bad. They don't like it. They're not happy. And so, yeah, a lot of people will just sort of get mad at you and go away, though. Yeah, exactly. It's like, bye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And that's really the thing too, we have to remember is that we all have our own clients, and we're not there to be the teacher for everyone. And so some people just aren't going to jive. Let them go. Don't try to hold on to your clients. No. We can work together. We can figure that. Just let them go. They'll probably find someone who can help them more on their wavelength, more where they are at that time. And so, well, even if you look out over the field of gurus, we have some of the most, like, you get the biggest cheater, most ridiculous gurus, to the most elementary people that actually don't know anything, to people that know something, to people that know everything, to, right? And so you get every kind of guru. But it's like there's some people that they need to learn from that cheater guru first, right? They need to learn that whatever lesson they're going to get there. And so they'll find their guru. They'll find their guru who will, and maybe they'll like, the guru will play that game of manipulation with them. And it's not going to help them much, but eventually they might see it. They might see it at the guru. They'll be like, oh, well, this guy's trying to manipulate me. Wait, I was doing the same to them. You know, and that's kind of, it's kind of where you hope those kind of bad relationships end up, to some kind of enlightenment. Not always, but we certainly hope for that. So we get this sort of thing. Now, so I wanted, part of the reason I'm talking about the 4 aims of life, and then down below we'll go into this sort of friendships and enmities between the energies or between the planets. So you've got, out of the 4 aims, 2 are more spiritual and 2 are more materialistic. And you'll notice that so then it gets broken up when we look into an astrology chart. Each aim of life has sort of 3 main houses. And so what we notice is that the Deva planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, Jupiter, own pretty much all the spiritual houses. And the Ashuras, the Rakshas, the Rakshas own the more materialistic houses. And that's really like, God, that's a huge, huge thing for, I'm sure all of you are struggling with that. I'm still struggling with it to a certain degree, is to bring that materialism that I have in myself and my spiritual self and trying to bring them together more and more, because it seems like they're always separate. And now I mentioned how you can kind of go from one to the other. And I've noticed that in my own life is that they are slowly, it all seems to be coming together more. Like a good way to describe this is certainly when I first started traveling to India, is I'd go to 6 months India and I'd be like in the spiritual bliss. And then I would go back to Canada for 6 months and I'd work and just make money and just go for it. Eventually the work got to be, I was doing construction work. It got to be maybe too soul crushing. It took me too far away from my spiritual path. And so I was like, I just can't do this anymore. It hurts too much to go that far into the materialism. And so I got rid of that. But anyways, the way life is working out, it's all coming together more and more. And that's really the big goal here, is to bring that material and the spirituality together. And that's kind of Mercury's role. in a lot of ways, is to bring that together, to bring the two sides together. In a way, it's kind of like, okay, you guys are enemies, right? Devas and Asuras, you're enemies. You don't like each other. But as long as you're talking, you're not fighting. And so in a way, Mercury wants to keep that conversation going. He wants to kind of make sure that everyone sort of gets to have their say, that everybody's heard, that everybody's seen. And in a way, this is like a huge part of what we're doing, just seeing people, hearing people. This is like, I mentioned my own hearing thing. People think I'm a really good listener. I just don't hear them actually. But yeah, careful. It's like, oh wow, Mike just listened to my whole story, and it's like, no, I didn't hear a word you said. Hyperbole, I do hear. But it's like, this is a big thing. You see it in relationships, you hear it a lot. I'm not heard. He doesn't hear me. I tell him what I want, but he doesn't hear me. And I'm saying it that way because I work with a lot of women, so I hear it from the woman's side a lot, right? I don't know if the men care about being heard quite as much, but the women certainly want to be heard. And so you hear this a lot. And so as therapists or as counselors, that's really like, we really have to focus a lot on listening to people. Just hear them out. Even if what they're saying is kind of nonsense, hear them out, let them finish it. Let them finish what they have to say, and then we can talk about it. But a lot about too, again, that like just talking about it, talk therapy. Right? We know, even I get these wild, crazy ideas sometimes to do things in life. And as soon as I say it out loud, I hear how crazy it is. But as long as I'm just thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that's a wonderful idea. And it comes out, and I'm like, no, maybe just modify that maybe somehow. And so Mercury likes that talking. It's sort of that talk therapy, that to be heard, to be seen. Now, one of the other things with Mercury is the student. So it's the one who always has questions. He's always like, I want to know, tell me. On the other hand, we could say someone who has Mercury and a strong Mercury in their chart, like they don't, like, I get this a lot. People tell me, I'm like, well, tell me about your life a little bit before I even do their astrology chart. I'll be like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they write me these stories, and actually, I still don't know anything about them. I'm reading this, and it's like all over the place. I don't have a clue about this person. And so that's kind of this, what's happened is they've told me a story, but they've left me with nothing but more questions. And so when someone has like a strong Mercury in their chart, they kind of answer all the questions. They don't leave those, like people aren't questioning them. We'll see the same with like a lot of like learning disabilities or speech disorders or things with coordination, things in the body. And in a way, the way those affect the people outside is they're questioning. They're like, what's wrong with this person? Who is this person? I used in my writing, I used Tourette's as an example. Tourette's syndrome is like, they just throw out these swears, like the worst kind of swears. They just shout them out all of a sudden in the middle of nowhere. And that's a very mercurial problem because everyone's looking at them going like, what's going on? What's with this person? Right? And so they're just kind of making questions. We'll see the same. People have these kind of funny coordination and their body's not quite coordinated. I think multiple sclerosis is one of these. And they kind of move a little bit funny. And we're like, what's up with that person? You know, and this is kind of that mercurial question. But then again, when the people have a very strong Mercury, they tell you their life story and you have no questions for them. They've told you everything. Right? Their coordination is very smooth. You see them out there. You don't ask yourself, what's up with this person or who is this person? It's like your questions are kind of answered. And so Mercury really has a lot to do with that sort of question and answer sort of thing. In a way, that's what we're trying to do with our students as well, is answer their questions. They come, they've got questions. What about my fate? What about my future? What about this? What about that? Now, I try to warn people who are in Rahu periods. I always warn them. I say, okay, you're coming to me for answers. I'm not going to be able to give you any answers. You might even be more confused when you leave than when you came. But that's because of your Rahu. And so I try to watch that in the charts, and so I can tell them, it's like, you want answers? Well, you're in a Rahu period. You're not going to get answers. Sorry. We can do what we can, but you're not going to get answers. Jupiter period, you'll get your answers. And Jupiter, of course, is the one who answers the questions in the end.
Does that apply during a Rahu dasha, like the whole 9 years of it or whatever?
18 years? Pretty
Yeah.
much, pretty much. And it's like any answers that they get in the Rahu dasha, later on in the dasha or afterwards, they'll be like, that was wrong. Oops, that wasn't right at all. And so Rahu kind of brings that confusion into us, and also, like any Rahu Mercury combinations, of course, are really going to heighten the questioning sort of thing. But that is Rahu. It's a lot of the questioning, and it's a lot of kind of that confusion is what Rahu brings to the life. And so they can't find an answer. They don't know which way to go. That's kind of the definition of Rahu. And so we have those periods of our life. We don't know. We don't know anything. And so we just follow our gut instinct, or we just do whatever we think is the best thing to do. And that in a way is Mercury and rhetoric. And so you just kind of find the best answer, and hopefully it works out for you. Rahu and Ketu also, they're very karmic. And so it's like in a Rahu period, you might feel like your free will is at a maximum, but it's actually at a minimum. And so we have these periods and these times in our lives where we don't have a lot of free will to direct ourselves. And so it's just God, it's just the universe sending us out wherever. And we'll find whatever instrument we need. And sometimes it's an astrologer to say, well, go that way. And it's like, well, I don't know. I guess, well, that guy told me to go that way, I'll go that way. And maybe it's not the right thing in their life exactly, but it will, and it's certainly not going to answer their questions. But anyways, we become just part of their path, part of their karma, part of their universal compass, I guess. And that's the other thing about healing. It's like, nobody's going to get any healing or any benefit from you unless they already have it inside of themselves. And so then it's in a way, it's healing is all about, it's like 50% their luck, 50% your luck. And if you're both having a good day, they're going to get some healing. But really it starts, if they don't have it inside of themselves, they're not going to get anything from you. And that's another thing we have to sometimes, I guess, surrender to, is that we can't help everyone. We're not going to be that bright, shining star that guides everyone to their truth. It's just not going to happen. It's impossible. You can't expect that from yourself. We're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. We're going to really resonate really well with some people, and other people are not going to resonate at all. And so we just have to work with it and kind of do our best. And surrender to the mistakes that we're going to make, essentially, because you are going to make mistakes. You're going to tell people to do the wrong thing. You're going to read people's chart from a chart that doesn't even match to that person. You're God, there's, especially, I don't know if you're all astrologers. I know some of you are astrologers, but if you're an astrologer, man, get used to making a lot of mistakes. If you can't make mistakes, you're not going to be able to be in astrology. And so it's even like, well, that's in a way, that's science. You make a hypothesis and then you test it. You can't get the right answer first and then start coming up with your hypothesis. It doesn't work that way. And so, especially my nakshatra project, it's full of hypotheses. I want to tell you that right now, if we're doing that, it's full of hypotheses. I don't know if there's any truth in there at all, but there's a lot of hypotheses, a lot of good, bright ideas. Ding, right? So good luck with that, guys. So, but that's kind of Mercury as well. He's both sides. He's like, no one's really right or wrong. It's kind of, Mercury can always sort of see both sides, and he's ready to adapt to the side that he's on. And I find it a little bit funny, they class Mercury as an Ashura, but he's actually, some of the devas, they don't, let's go down to that. Some of the devas don't mind him. They kind of like Mercury. And then Mercury goes and hangs out with a deva, and then he's with Jupiter, and so he acts like Jupiter. He's like Sun, he acts like Sun. And so like this, here we go. Oh, here we go. So what kind of
Mike,
focus?
can I just say something about the Asuras and the Devas?
Yeah, please.
Because if you know how I am always questioning everything, and lately because I'm teaching a philosophy class from the Vedas onwards, I've been looking at a lot of the basic sources of the translation of the Vedas. And I realized, and after so many years, one of these truths that comes out, that in the first sources, Vedas and Asuras weren't denominated as gods and demons. They were actually, the Devas were associated with natural forces like water, wind, fire, and the Asuras were actually associated with moral codes, with more humanistic personifications of morality. Like, for example, Varuna was actually an Asura. And it's only posteriorly when like deities evolve to become personifications of humans, that this shadow part of humans become negative, right? The demons and the gods. And this happens the same in our own psyches. It happens the same in everything we do when there's this duality of human beings entering the world of universal forces. So right now, from that perspective and teaching the myths, of course, now I understand a lot with the planets, because of course, Jyotish comes from the time of Vedanga, but most of the myths that are later evolved come from Puranas, when human beings have their touches there. But it's true that if we look at Asuras and demons, this is very mercurial. Of course, I love Mercury.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's the other side of the coin. It's not a negative connotation, but another side of looking at things that is maybe a bit apart from nature, but it has that human value to it. And I love the Asuras. So yeah.
Well, it's even if we look into Christianity, Lucifer is an angel, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's I should probably try to train myself out of calling the Ashuras demons all the time, because I never really mean it like that. And, well,
but I think we understand you. But to our clients, for example, and when they see the names, of course, in the chart, like malefics, and they read alone in internet, I always have to put them in that space of, please don't read everything and don't believe everything you read, and let's just see everything like the two sides of the same coin. Like, we all have these capacities inside of us, like the planets and all these kinds of things. But like you said, like your nakshatra project, doesn't matter if it's full of mistakes that you think, like healing, if it's inside of us, truth also is inside of whoever reads it. So no matter what you put out there, we will find what each of us needs. And out into the world, I am very sure that this project is gonna be great.
Yeah, so it's like this, and really Mercury is the one that really wants to keep both sides talking. He's, because of his adaptability, he's able to go to both sides and cross over both sides. And so in a way, he also gets some, it gets so confusing because every planet seems to relate with prana and the breath. But that's what they say about the breath and the prana, is that it goes from heaven to earth. It's kind of that only force that's able to kind of cross that boundary. And so that's why we spend so much time working on our breath. And then we try to focus on not just the breath, we think of it more of as a flow of energy or a movement of energy. And it becomes a little bit of a different focus when we focus that way. But what we're trying to do is follow our breath all the way back up to the heavens, full peace, Satchitananda. And then we take whatever we get from the heavens and bring it back down to this earth and express it. And so Mercury's kind of able to go over to both sides like that. And so we see that, just looking at my spelling of enemy. So we see, again, we'll see that. I'll do this, yeah, there we go. So I just want to kind of focus on the back part of the friends, enemy, neutral, but we get the planets here. And so we see that generally the planets are like they're friends with the Devas are friends with the Devas and the Ashuras are friends with the Ashuras. And then it gets a little bit cloudy because they have a little bit of relationship, cross-border relationships to a certain degree. At least they're not full enemies with everyone. And so we see something like the sun, he's neutral to Mercury. But Mercury really likes the sun. Now, that's like, you could say if Sun is the father and these are his 9 children or something, he's just like, okay, that's nice, another one of my children. Go towards Mercury, where Mercury's like, oh, there's the big boss. That's kind of Mercury wants to grow up to be like Sun in a sense. And then we get something like the moon, and where's Jupiter? Okay, that's the other way. So the moon is kind of, what do they call it? Unconditional love. And so the moon has no enmity towards anyone. The moon kind of just absorbs the energy from everyone. Feeds and nourishes everyone equally. All of her children, he just sort of takes care of. Jupiter's kind of the opposite. You can't see it here, obvious way. But nobody is a big enemy of Jupiter. Everybody, well, mostly likes Jupiter. There's a couple that are a little bit more neutral to him, but no one has enmity towards Jupiter. Everyone's like, oh, Jupiter, he's all right. He's not so bad. And so they call Jupiter the great benefic in Vedic astrology. And it takes a little bit of work, especially if you're looking online and things like this. It takes a little bit of work to even figure out how Jupiter causes bad things to happen. And he does kind of through overabundance, overgrowth, those sorts of problems is what he does. But he's also, it's like Jupiter doesn't like Mercury because Mercury is more, he's like facts and he's information, and Jupiter is more, he's theory. He doesn't really, he'll give you some direction. And I said Jupiter's the one that answers questions. Well, he gives direction, but even when he answers a question, a lot of times Jupiter doesn't give a direct answer. He doesn't give you a straight answer. He's like, he gives you some theory to think about or some higher ideal to help guide you. You could say some religion even, or some philosophy, or this kind of thing. And so that doesn't really go over well with Mercury because he does want a more direct answer. Now it's also interesting in Vedic astrology, and we get, okay, so Jupiter doesn't like Mercury, and Mercury's whatever about Jupiter. But then when we start looking at astrology charts, we find that Jupiter Mercury is like the perfect match. Like if you get a couple, you want a Jupiter person and a Mercury person, they go the best together. The way the chart is set up, you could say. And so that's that sort of opposites attract in a sense. And well, at the end of the day, I don't always like this. They say Mercury's an enemy of Jupiter, but at the end of the day, Jupiter, he loves having these students around to ask him questions. He really likes that. It's like, and if you think of a couple coming together, one person's very Jupiterian, one is very Mercurial. It's like the Jupiter is kind of always looking at the bigger, broader picture of everything. And the Mercury person's always doing all the details and doing the itinerary. Jupiter's like, let's go to Central America. And Mercury's like, oh my God, I gotta make an itinerary. I gotta make a plan. I gotta figure this out. Do I have enough money? Do I have enough time? Do I have enough? How am I gonna go? What bus? What? And Mercury's now just dives into all the details. Where Jupiter's just a little bit, like I said, yeah, Central America, that sounds nice. And that's kind of that bigger picture of Jupiter. He's kind of just sort of throws out these bigger ideas, and Mercury's got to kind of deal with all the detailed stuff. Now, we get the same with, say, like Mars and Jupiter, or sorry, Mars and Venus. Again, in the astrology chart, it's like, well, the archetypical man does very well with the very archetypical sort of feminine. And so you get this sort of really tough guy man, Mars, going with this more compromising is the word I was looking for, more compromising sort of Venus. And again, if you put, like, you might think that like two Mars people, well, why wouldn't you want to have two Mars people, two very athletic, say, or two and like this, but it doesn't work because they fight too much. It's like the same thing, two Venus people. It doesn't really work because, well, nothing really gets done. They're both sort of peaceful and compromising, and it's like, well, do something already, make something happen. And so that's why the Venus people really like the Mars, because Mars will do something. He'll make sure something happens. We get also with Saturn's quite interesting, because Saturn's pair is sun and moon. And I don't know if all of you are astrologers, but if we look at the astrology chart, that seventh house from a Saturn house will always be a sun or moon house. And that's our partner, our pair. And so we find, well, Saturn's interesting because he's the old one. And so we often find some big age gaps in Saturn moon, Saturn Mars sort of pairings. But it's also kind of like Saturn's very grounded. He's very like this reality, where sun and moon are actually very much, I don't know, that reality, kind of idealistic in a sense. We even think of the karma in a way, it's like, to a certain degree, the sun and moon is what we have. Like, sun is what we have inside, moon is what we have outside. We can't do a lot to change our sun or our moon in our chart. They're a little bit fixed in a sense, but all these other planetary energies we can work on. We can work to improve our Mercury. We can work to improve our Mars. We can work to, it's kind of our free will is down with all these other 5 planets, where sun and moon are a little bit like, that's just what you have, deal with it. And now they're, to a certain degree, they can also be worked on, but I think less so. And part of the reason is because they're very singular planets. They don't have 2 signs. They don't have a masculine and a feminine. They're these sort of pure masculine energy and pure feminine energy. And so it becomes a bit difficult, but all the other planets have this blend. And so we can really work with them. It's like, it's kind of funny actually, when we think about free will. So what we generally think of is, so I'll distinguish freedom and free will. So when we think about free will is very earthbound. It's very much something that happens in the plane of duality, right? Because it's like, well, I have some free will, and I have that, I can interact with this world with my free will. And so it's always kind of in that plane of duality. What we're really going for through spirituality isn't free will. It's actually just the opposite. It's freedom, really. And so with the sun especially, it's where we feel the most free. We feel the most authentic. We feel the most sort of ourselves. But it's not quite I suppose through the sun, it feels almost like a divine guidance. Whereas with Mars, it's more like free will. You go forth and do it. All the other planets are kind of the same. Well, so we get these sort of interesting pairings. Now, I wanted to talk about this sort of stuff as well, the chakras and the planets and the signs. And this comes from Frawley. And Frawley's got a few, like he's got Astrology of the Seers, and he's got a few books. He's got a whole bunch of like books on Ayurveda and books on astrology, and most of his work is crap. There, I said it. Well, I think what happens is he gets his students, he's not doing any work anymore. And I don't know if he ever did. His students do all the writing. He doesn't check it, and the book gets published with his name on it. So he probably knows something, but he's not showing it to anybody. And so his planets, but this is all right on one hand, but because it looks very good. You look at it and it's like everything seems to line up very, very nice when you look at Saturn being Muladhara and Aquarius and all of that. And it seems to kind of line up quite nicely. But if you think of some of the more classical sources on Kundalini and these sorts of things, like this has Saturn ruling Muladhara. But anybody who knows anything about Kundalini knows that Mercury and Ketu rule Muladhara. And so what is this Saturn? Where does this come from? So we put it because it actually, to look at it, it works and it seems very nice. And so I put it there, and we should know this because it works. But the thing is, Saturn isn't going to help open your Muladhara, and he's not going to help you get into your energy system. He's going to make you hard, you could say. And well, Saturn's reality. If you want to deal with your Kundalini system and your chakras, forget about reality, man. You got to leave that behind, because actually your Kundalini isn't real. This energy isn't real in the way Saturn thinks of reality anyways. It's kind of that Kundalini and the chakras is that foggy space between reality and non-reality, between consciousness and earth. And so then you get this sort of chakra system. So the first thing you do is, well, they always say with Ketu, you need to surrender, but you also need to sort of accept the reality of the unreal. You have to sort of understand that myths are real. Myths are actually more real than history. And so once you start to think like that, then you're ready to kind of start dealing with chakra, and you're ready to kind of go into that sort of energy world a little bit more. Now, well, the reason we know, well, especially Mercury rules over Muladhara. Mercury gets associated with Ganesha, the little elephant-headed boy. And Ganesha was made in order to protect his mama's kund. When mama goes and Shakti goes and has a bath in the little pond, which they call those little ponds kunds, is bound on the side. So she would have her bath and people would walk in on her, and she didn't like that. So she made Ganesha to protect her kund. And that's what our Muladhara is. It's just this snake living at the bottom of the well, basically. And so in order to gain entrance into that mystical world, we need to get past Ganesha. And Shiva tried to do that by force. He chopped off Ganesha's head. And all he did is he made Shakti go crazy. She went wild. He's going to destroy the whole world. And so we can't force our way into that energy grid. We have to just let go more and more and more. In a way, what we're letting go of is this reality, this world, this personal identity. And so the more we sort of let go of that, then our boundaries start to become fuzzy. The boundaries of reality start to become a little fuzzy and foggy a little bit. And now we're starting to get into energy. We're starting to sort of enter into Mama's kund. She's going to let us in once we Well, I like to think once we have a few sweets, because Ganesha, if you want to get past Ganesha, you have to be sweet to him. You have to talk sweet to him. You have to give him some ladu, kind of a round, sweet ball, right? You have to kind of like that. And so, well, if we're talking like that, Jupiter rules over the sweet flavor. And so we need to access our own inner Jupiter, and our sweetness has to come out. Yeah, go ahead, Emmett.
I like that, because I find, and just reflecting on what we were talking about earlier as well, where like with clients, like I like to be direct and straight shooter, but there's a way that like we need to be sweet to them first to gain access to their spirituality, to gain access to their subconscious. So there is a way to give your client or your customer sweets, and then you gain access to them. So like when I do transformation packages, like people don't want to, like I can't, people say they want shadow work right away, but it's not like come to me and I'm going to rip you apart right away. It's I've got to give you sweets for like 2 sessions, and then on the 3rd session then I rip you apart, kind of thing, because people need to feel fat and safe before they're able to go into that zone where they can see the darkness, I guess, because they need to believe in the light first. So
Yeah.
I really like the Ganesha sweetness thing. I think it really applies, and maybe finding ways to appeal to the, like, well, how would you appeal to their sweetness when you're looking at a chart? Because it's like a Leo is easy, you know, kind of thing. So like and like there's different signs that are different difficulties. So would you kind of look at more like the Mercury, the Venus, and the Jupiter rather than looking at the Sun? Or how would you kind of approach giving the proper sweetness for the right person?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, there's a couple different answers. One is the answer like Parvati, when she wanted to be sweet to Shiva, she didn't know what to do. So at first, what we often do is, well, we offer people what we like. That's kind of the first step. What's going to soften me up? What's going to help to make me open up to someone? And so we try to offer that to people in a way. I'm a big
That's a
fan.
very first house Sun answer.
Well, I'm a big, like, for example, I'm a big kind of like, like a coffee shop philosopher in a way. And so I might be like, well, let's meet for coffee. And so we have some coffee, and we might even have some sweet. Let's share a dessert. Let's share some cheesecake or something, right? And quite literally, like, butter people up first a little bit. And so there's different ways as well to make them feel safe. One is like that appeal to authority. Okay, that's malicious. People will come to me, they'll be like, oh, he spent 15 years in Varanasi, and so I can trust him. And then it's like, well, then they come to me, right? So there's certain things that'll get them to come to us at first and think, oh, this is a person who can help open the gates to our inner well. And so they come to us. And then we'll all have our own sort of like shtick in a way that we use to sort of butter people up. We'll have our own sort of resonance with people that'll help to make them feel comfortable. I don't know so much if I look in the astrology chart and appeal to that. Like, I've got a client, I've answered like his last 10 emails by saying, your stress is going to continue for the next 8, or what am I down to now? Down to about 15 years left in the Saturn period. I'm like, your stress is going to keep growing for the next 15 years. He's like, when's the stress going to be over? I'm like, well, when Saturn's over, after 15 years. And I said, but you're going to like the result, and you're going to build your business. And he wants to be like a big CEO, corporate man. And he kept trying to get a job, and I kept saying, it's not going to, you have to do it for yourself. And he's like, that's impossible. I'm like, you have 20 years. Get to work, man. And so he is, he's working very hard, but he's always saying, when's the stress gonna end? And I'm like, 15 years from now. And so sometimes that direct truth is also another way. It's why he trusts me, because I'm honest with him. It's like, I'm sorry, man, your stress is gonna, it's actually coming up to a Saturn Ketu. Is it Saturn Ketu? Saturn Ketu period for him. I'm like, do you think you're on stress now? You haven't reached your maximum potential yet. you can handle way more stress. After, I think it's maybe 3 years from now, I think Saturn, Mercury. I'm like, when you get to your Saturn Ketu, then you can talk to me about, oh my God, what is all this stress? I can't handle it, because he's going to hit his breaking point in Saturn Ketu period. But anyway, so we can kind of sort of see these things in the charts. And maybe it's because he's a Saturn period that he appreciates my Saturn honesty. Sorry, man, 15 years. Sorry, man, you could take way more stress. You haven't even touched the surface of what you can handle yet. So, like this, maybe someone in a Venus period, I might have to be a little bit sweeter, sweet talking to them a little bit. Use a bit of poetry or some song and dance a little bit to get them to trust me. What you would want to see, I haven't really thought of that as I read charts, like how could I get this person to trust me? Usually I'm just like, oh, here's my sun answer. Either they're going to trust me or they're not.
You can always do the double thing, you know, like, yes, you have 15 years of stress, but that's going to make you resilient. Like CEOs have stress, so stress is used to make you richer, or, you know, like, so
Yeah,
I
well,
use that double-edged thing, you know, like, yes, you're
that's-
going to be stressed, but you're going to learn from this and you're going to be resilient and you're going to have great boundaries, you know, like euphemisms, allegories, and I put a myth in there, things like
yeah.
that, but decorate the truth.
Well, he was struggling through his Saturn, and so I'm like, you struggled all through Saturn. You wanted more business, more work, more clients. Now you have more business, more work, more clients, right? And so it's like, you're doing good. I just kind of encourage them like that. You're doing good, Ranabir. You're just keep going. You're doing very well. Yeah. So that kind of way. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention about this little chart thing, it's a lot like this bigger chart thing. I think I added this. This was at the back of the last page of the sun section. If it's not there, well, it will be now, I guess. So you've got that. And well, right away, we can see this is different because they put the split between Gemini and Cancer, whereas the other chart had the split between Cancer and Leo. And there's other sort of things that I think are a little bit wrong with both of these charts in a certain way, because I think that inhalation is going to go, and if we think of Kundalini, right, it's going from one side to the other side and back to the other side again. And so I think that inhalation is going from Taurus to Cancer to Virgo to Scorpio. And so it's going through all the feminine signs, is how I kind of see it going. Whereas the masculine, the exhalation, that sort of, that exhale is probably weaving itself through the masculine sign as it sort of comes up the Kundalini channel. And so there's different ways we can see. This chart we're looking at here, I believe it was a fellow named Freedom Cole who made this. He gave him and Mark kind of worked together to give a workshop on Tantra chapter 6 a whole bunch of years ago. And I did that with them. And I think it was Freedom that made this. And well, Freedom's like myself. He also makes mistakes sometimes. And so these are things we can kind of work with. We don't have to take this of like, this is how the breath goes. If we look, where it says S1, S2, K15, K14, those are kind of like the teethies. The teethies is basically one of the limbs of the Panchang. And so this gets associated a lot with, like, as the sun wanes, every teethy, as it's waning, then one goddess goes from the moon to the sun and gives the sun more power. And then you get the dark moon, and then those deities go from the sun back to the moon again. But they usually use 15 of them. 16, but yeah, that's another story. They always do that in Vedic knowledge. It's like there's 15 of them. Actually, there's 16. There's 4 of them. Oh no, there's 5. They always add one. But the one usually is like there's 15, but then if you put all the 15 together, you get one very special big goddess. And so that's like the tethys that way. I don't know if you know what this, the end of the 12 is listed here. The end of the 12. So what this is, it goes from the heart to the end of the 12. And so that's actually a lot of the breathing they do in Kashmiri Shaivism. They're not going right down to Muladhara. Like in a sense, by the time you get to Kashmiri Shaivism, they sort of say you should have dealt with all those lower chakras, all those lower energies. And so here they are, they're going from the end of the 12 is like a 12 finger space above the head. Now, some people do a 12 finger space in front of the nose. They're following that, the flow of air, 12 fingers out. Whereas from the top, and Mark teaches from the crown, from the top, because he's like, this isn't about the air, this is about the energy. And so the energy kind of coming in from the 12 finger space. And it's really nice when you're breathing and doing those breathing and visualization practices to bring it up to the 12 finger space, because then you're including, well, you're kind of including the metaphysical part of you, right? Because you're, in a way, they say your aura goes, at least has good power until that 12 finger space. And so that's kind of your aura. And so if we're dealing with energy, so we got to deal with our aura, and so bring up to the 12 finger space. You bring kind of divine energy down, and it basically, by the time it gets to that 12 finger space, it's entered you. It's entered your individual system, and then down to the heart. And so they're only going from heart to 12 finger space. Cool. So we can follow it that way as well. Yeah, this is a very interesting chart. I kind of look at it a lot. I never get any answers when I look at it. It kind of, yeah, it's one of those things that you just got to kind of work with it. And I get this sense as well that, because you look at like new moon and you look at the summer solstice and sunset and things like that, well, then that would change with the seasons. It would change as time changes. It would change day and night. And so this is always kind of changing in a way. And so I don't know if there's really an absolute sort of chart like this that you can make. I can't believe it's almost 2 hours already. But it is very close to that. So I think I might have mentioned Anuloma Viloma before, but it's probably the most, again, I think it's the best practice. And so I gave it here again. This is the alternate nostril breathing. And so you're balancing the two sides. A lot of it is sort of like balancing the two sides of the nervous system. We can almost think of it that way as well. Mercury sort of rules those two sides of the nervous system. Again, Mercury has a lot to do with like neurology and coordination and things like that as well. One of the things that gets missed with Mercury a lot, he rules the color green. And so, well, he's the student, so he's the greenhorn. We could say he's the grasshopper, we sometimes say, or sometimes we just call like green, a little bit wet behind the ears. In a way, all these sort of metaphors kind of deal with Mercury a lot. But this also suggests that, like going to the forest green, go spend time in that green of the nature, all those different shades of green you get in the forest become like a remedy for Mercury in a sense. So then I got some mantras. Very popular Vishnu mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. Shivananda Ashram really likes that mantra. It's kind of I don't know if you guys are know much about Shivananda Ashram. It's like maybe ashram light, you could say. It's very Vishnu and it's in its orientation. You won't get any Kali or Durga. They have Shiva there, but they kind of like, they almost want to pretend like Shiva's not there, in a sense. It's like a nice family ashram, you could say. And so Om Namo Narayana is like that. It's a very friendly mantra. It's not like Om Namah Shivaya, where it's a little bit, there's some hardness in there. It's going to bring you into a, it might introduce you to ghosts and goblins. Om Namo Narayana is very gentle, so it's very easy sort of Maha Mantra. It's also a Maha Mantra. So a nice mantra for anybody to do. The Ganesha, Ganapate, it's the Vedic name for Ganesha. So Om Ganapataye Namaha. You hear that a lot, or Om Glom Ganapataye Namaha. Sanjay Rath does a lot about, he writes in his book on astrology remedies, he kind of talks about the different number of syllables in a mantra and how that relates. And there's a lot of work, a lot of research can be done on the sort of syllables. So we have two mantras, so have a little bit different effect, but we can do what we want with that. So are there any questions or comments as we come to the end? Go ahead, Andrea.
I was just thinking about Mercury in relation to ADHD, and how like ADHD people, it seems like it's almost like we have too many questions all the time, all at once, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted to know your thoughts about the relationship between like ADHD and the Mercury in the chart.
Well, again, it's that I think one of the best remedies for ADHD is forest bathing, going into the green of the forest, that kind of quietness. Less questions. A lot of ADHD probably has some relationship with Rahu aspecting a Mercury in the chart, kind of hyperizing that mercurial questioning. And so again, the kind of remedies, those kind of remedies that are going to bring the peace, even the mantras relating with Mercury might help kind of combat some of that questioning, because it's kind of cycles of questioning. And so mantra can be very, very good to sort of break away or step away from all the questions, get a little bit of peace. As I've said, the forest, I think, is really, really wonderful for people with ADHD. Go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, sorry if I'm interjecting when I shouldn't, Andréane, but I get a lot of customers that show up and they say, oh, like I have ADHD, don't worry about it. And I'll usually respond like, you probably have a Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius placement, and ADHD is just kind of a way for science to diagnose someone who thinks really quickly. So I kind of tell them to kind of accept that they think quickly, and ADHD is just a way for science to say this person thinks quickly. So I kind of work with the acceptance part of it rather than saying it needs to be something that be fixed.
That's how I feel about it all the time. Like it's just hard to and sorry if I guess whatever, but yeah, it's just hard to live in society with that type of behavior, because like, for example, like me, this classes, it's really hard for me to just sit and watch, like, and it looks like I'm not listening, but like I'm doing other things, but it's because that's the way I focus, it's like by like doing a lot of things at the same time, and like kind of transposing my focus into other things and then I don't know how to explain it, but it's just badly seen in society to be like that. You have to, and then it also seems like it would be badly seen as like, I mean, there's good things and bad things about it. Like, for example, it's hard for me to sit still. So I have to practice that. And then when I do practice it, it makes me feel very good, because I don't get that often. But then like, it's a good thing because I get to, I don't know, get a lot of things done in my brain all at once.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so I feel like ADHD is not, it's not a bad thing, it's not an illness, it's just like a thing, you know?
It's just science has that word to describe Gemini, Virgo, and
Yeah.
Sagittarius placements. Like that's all it is. It's just different words that mean different things, and we label it as bad, but really it's really an ability. It's a skill.
Yeah, it's just a behavior.
And really what stigmatized ADHD is this horrible, awful public school system that we have that really doesn't know how to deal with ADHD. It's really like the opposite of ADHD is what they expect. And so, well, like you say, there's nothing wrong with people that have ADHD. Well, you're hyperactive, you can't sit still, but it's like work with that, right? Use it in a way that can be to an advantage, right? Take a job that lets you multitask and do a lot of different things and that sort of thing. And ADHD can be quite good at multitasking and doing a lot of those sort of things. There's a little trick, kind of a meditation trick sometimes. And so you're sitting there and you're meditating, you're focusing on your breath. And you start to get all these other thoughts are coming in. And I'm sure ADHD, all these other thoughts would come in. But then what they say is, okay, focus on your breath, that rise and fall of the breath, but now also be aware of your whole body. And so suddenly now you're using your brain for these, you split your own brain basically, and use your brain to keep track of two things at once. And so, and I'm using this for meditation as an example, but there's other ways that we can kind of intentionally split our brain like this. And what happens is once you kind of split it on the, like my breathing and my body, there's not a lot of room for other things to come in anymore. And so there's little tricks you can use like this. Again, it's like, well, you said it's nice to sit and you get a nice feeling when you're able to sort of sit still and relax and all of that. And so these are little tricks you can use. The mantra as well can be very, very good. Now, a lot of times what you'll find with the mantra is you'll keep your mantra going, but there's still going to be the thoughts. And so what the mantra kind of helps to do is you don't attach to the thoughts. You keep with the mantra, the thoughts are coming and going, you keeping with the mantra, going like that. And so, yeah, we don't want to, like you said, you don't want to cure ADHD. There's nothing really wrong with it, but you can find these little tricks to sort of deal with it and sort of get the effect that you want from your brain, I guess you could say. So.
I don't know if I have ADHD. Like if someone meets me, probably they would say I do. I don't know. I'm a Gemini, but I've been like Andrea, and I just wanted to tell you what you said, Mike, was going to be also my advice. When I was younger, I needed to do many things at the same time, like actual physical things to be listening. And my trick all these years was to split my brain. So I started splitting it in two parts, like you say, the body and the breath, but then my brain got more and more intelligent and I still wanted to move. So I split it into the mantra. And then I split it into counting the mantras with my mind, not using a mala. Not using a mala, and then splitting the number, going back from 108 backwards, plus doing a new mantra that day that I didn't know. And I practiced doing this for years until now I can sit still, but I have like maybe 5 divisions in my mind. Yeah. That I go from one to the, I still have many divisions in the mind, and there's very little times that I'm free of thought, let's say, but the movement, the standing up, the doing things has calmed down. The splitting with the splitting mind.
Like, yeah, it's almost like you're not like dismissing like that extra thought energy. You're just kind of like channeling it to something different. Like instead of like letting it be like really uncontrollable, like I'm thinking about a bunch of random thoughts and I'm singing this mantra, you're like, oh, I'm gonna focus on like this mantra in all these specific ways to make my brain like it's your brain's still gonna be active, but it's just gonna be directed to like something, I guess. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so we
worked for me.
Yeah, work with what we have. I'm kind of the same. I don't know if I would probably not ADHD, but I've got Mars and Rahu both aspecting my moon, for example, and so there is some hyperization, you could say, in the way I feel inside, and I get very
Your moon's in Gemini too, right, Mike? I think.
also Gemini, yeah.
But ADHD is Gemini, basically.
Yeah. And so like I grew up in I was in these little villages in Canada, and so there was nobody around there to say, oh, you have ADHD. I remember, for example, a teacher coming by, and they'd be giving lectures, and I'd be like drawing or kind of coloring or doodling, or I'm always like doing that sort of stuff. And I just remember the teacher coming by and going, oh, you do that every class? And I was like, yeah, pretty much. Interesting. And then they walked away. Um, but I still remember that. I was like grade 4 or something. That little interesting, I remember. But yeah, so it's also, it's like a teacher might look at doodling and drawing. Some might look at it and go, oh, that student's not paying attention. For me, you show up to the class and you're coming, so it's like, well, you must, I'm not forcing you to be here. And so if you're doodling or doing other things while I'm talking, I'm certainly not going to make any judgment against that. It's like, yeah, go for it, do it. You show up, I'm very happy to see you here. Yeah, but I think the kind of multitasking is a big thing for ADHD. Just give your mind something to chew on, basically. It's hungry, it wants some food. And so if your mind is kind of really scattered and can't find any focus and it's just all over the place, it's because you're not giving it any nourishment. And so I think probably these classes are probably also a kind of nourishment. It gives you this something to kind of focus your mind on and think about that's not just air, it's not just wind blowing through. And so, yeah, like Dana said, or like same with me, start with focus on one thing. Now, okay, let's now split it. Keep a focus on both these things. If you're still wandering, find that third thing. Keep your focus on all three of these. And that will really, anyways, it'll help to train the mind. And certainly at first your ADHD is going to say, no, this is a bad idea. Think about that now. Go think about that now. Go think about that now. Not really terribly wrong, but try to bring some discipline into it. And you'll find it really, again, if the discipline is coming from inside yourself, you'll find it very kind of productive and very useful. Not so much when your teacher is trying to discipline you and you just stay sitting in that seat for the next 2 hours, right? When someone else is kind of bringing that discipline from outside, it kind of backfires on ADHD, you could say. What if,
And then, sorry, and another trick, Adrienne, because I see your name, I think you might speak more than one language, right? Instant translation. Instant translation to people, this I practice a lot because, well, my boyfriend is from South Africa, my family is from Spain, so while they speak in Spanish, I instantly translate. So you could do this with like movies or like to yourself, or if you know 3 languages in the 3 stages, that also has helped me to stop the movement. So again, you split your mind. So you're watching a movie in English and you instantly translate it in your mind, or you write one, you're writing, one you're thinking, one, it's another way of splitting. And languages also has helped me a lot to be still, to listen to my clients, for example, like to listen and to focus. And with time and practice, now I can do it. Like I can at least be an hour, listening to someone. It's true that my head goes into various parts, but I can focus on that. And the language thing helped a lot also with that.
yeah.
Just another trick.
What are your Mercuries in, if I can ask? Because this would relate, right?
Mine?
Yeah.
Mine is in Cancer in 2nd house.
Okay.
With the sun. It's not so strong really, but Gemini ascendant, I don't know. We spoke about this, I think, Mike. It's not, I don't know why, but the 2nd house, I suppose, languages, or yeah.
I have Sun and Mercury and Gemini in the 11th house.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I think it's like aspecting my Moon, Venus, and Rahu. If I'm not-
Yeah, so, well, yeah. So, yeah, there are a lot of Mercury Geminis around here.
Yeah.
So, or sorry, Moon Geminis. No. Oh, my Mercury's actually in, sorry, my Moon was in Gemini. My Mercury's in Sagittarius, actually.
There we go. Yeah.
And Ketu is aspecting up there, so. Yeah, they say Ketu's aspect on Mercury is a boon for astrologers or any kind of mystical sort of workers, because we're able to get the right answer without going through all the steps, sort of thing. And so, yeah, Ketu's a good boon. My Mercury's also in Mula, nakshatra, and so a lot of Ketu on my Mercury. So. Yeah, it's also why I'm kind of I give these classes and I'm a little bit scattered with my Mercurial.
So are K2 aspects related to getting answers without knowing why you have the answer? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, you get the answer, yeah, without maybe knowing why.
Yeah.
What they sort of say with Ketu on Mercury is you're able to actually read other people's thoughts a little bit.
I have that. That's why I asked. Yeah.
Yeah, where the moon is more the emotional, you feel everybody else's emotions.
Have that too.
Yeah, so there we go. So that's Ketu. He just removes the boundaries, right, between us and others, us and the other worlds. So
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I do have to head out, but yeah, great class, and we'll see you tomorrow.
yeah, you bet. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mike. Tomorrow I can't be here because I have a class actually, but I will catch up on the recording. Enjoy Rohini. I think it's Rohini, right? And we will
Rohini,
chat soon. Thank you so much for class. Bye,
wonderful.
Andrea.
Bye-bye.
Mike, what's the book you were talking about on Indian mythology on the Mars class? Maka or something?
Ha. K-A.
Ka?
K-A, yeah.
K.
K-A. That's
Okay,
it.
I wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I listened to that recording yesterday. It was so interesting. The
Hmm.
Mars class, it was great. Yeah, I'm actually gonna call a friend of mine who has like, she's like in a transition period and she has so much anxiety, it hurts my brain. And I have so many things to tell her now that's gonna help her regarding that Mars class. I'm excited.
Yeah, that was a very nice class, actually. I really something. There was some, yeah, I really liked it. Well, best class so far, I think.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, and I got like, I don't usually like right now I'm not stoned. I don't get stoned like, when I'm in a Zoom meeting with people, but last night because I was just listening to the recording and I have the house to myself, I like rolled this huge joint and I got really stoned, more than usual. And the information, everything that was happening, it was just so synchronistic. And I was like kind of calling in that energy to see what you were teaching, how it would apply to, my life and my surroundings. And yeah, it was a really psychedelic experience. I learned a lot. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, very good. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Oh yeah, and I saw are you still recording?
let me, I am, but I shouldn't be, so let's just give me a moment here and I'll